Greetings. I am Richard Taylor here from Goldsboro, North Carolina, here to talk about this extremely sad and disturbing case of a 21-month-old child who was murdered by his mother, and also the custody civil case that is ongoing concerning the remaining children who were not killed by that mother. I'm doing this on behalf of the Applewhite family. A classmate of mine, her son, is the father of the 21-month-old child that was brutally murdered and tortured by the mother. And you saw that mother in the thumbnail. This is that monster Heather Lipscomb of Kinston, North Carolina. Now that's where the case happened at, and if you can see from this screenshot I took of the article, that is the monster, Heather Lipscomb. And as if you can see, this case happened 4 years ago in Lenoir County, which is right next to Wayne County, Goldsboro. And you saw the thumbnail as well of little 21-month-old Jakobe Applewhite. I'll also show this picture so you can kind of get a glimpse of what has happened. That is the young child who was, brutally tortured and murdered by his own mother almost 4 years ago. And this situation is still ongoing because Miss Lipscomb, and I feel funny calling her Miss Lipscomb, has yet to be prosecuted in that case. But not only that, she is also being antagonistic to the remaining children. Now, she did have two other children, Shania and, let me make sure I get her name right, and Kalia Applewhite. Now, one of the children, I think Kalia was only 2 months old at the time of the murder, and the other child, Shania, was about 3 years old. So at the time of the murder, these children were removed from the home. Now, they didn't give the kids to the father who was present or the grandmother, Mrs. Applewhite, who was also present. They took the children into custody. And that is the second part of this case that is most egregious, because I'm going to show you this picture as well. This judge, Mrs. Elizabeth Heath of Lenoir County, Kinston, has took on a interest in this case and has made it very hard for the family of the Applewhites to maintain custody of the two remaining girls who were present at the time that their little brother was murdered. Now, once again, Mrs. Applewhite's son, Jakaya, is the father of all three children, but was not present in the household when 21-month-old Jakobe was killed. Now, this incident all started back on April the 22nd. And that is when 21-month-old Jakobe was pronounced dead at his home. And I have here, I have the police investigation reports here from Lenoir County. And I'm just going to go over a few of those facts just to give you a backstory of what happened. Now, I also here as well have a copy of the autopsy, which was done only 1 day after Jakobe's unfortunate demise. Now, the cause of his death, as stated here, I don't know if you can read it, but I will read it for you. I have it read. It says blunt force trauma, blunt force injuries to the abdomen and genitals, traumatic laceration of the pancreas, and also contusions of the scrotum with underlying testicular hemorrhage, and also acute fractures of the bilateral ribs. Now, this is a result, once again, of Miss Lipscomb, and I'm going to show you, once again, her arrest record. Now, the arrest didn't occur until July the 4th, which is almost 4 months after Jakobe's death. Now, once again, that is also a testament to some of the things that we're going to talk about uh, concerning this case. But just let me give you a little rundown of the investigation report so you can see what happened. Uh, this is from Detective David Leslie. Leslie Deaver, and he says that he was called on the scene on April the 22nd at about 6 o'clock. And when he walked in the door, he noticed a child about 30 pounds, clothed only in a diaper, and he appeared to be unresponsive. Now I'm going to read the highlighted part for you. He said his head, torso, and arms appeared to be warm to the touch, and his legs were slightly cooled and a bit mottled. Now I had to look up mottled, but mottled means with spots, patches, and splotches and blotches. Normally, that is a sign of blood pooling under the skin. And when talking to the mother, once again, that monster Heather Lipscomb says that, well, he had been kind of sick for 2 days, and he hadn't been eating, and he had been throwing up, and she had just checked on him 5 minutes prior before calling 911, and he was totally fine. Which we would later find out. Of course, that would be a very just nonsensical lie. So they actually interviewed Miss Lipscomb at the scene. The EMS arrived, and they tried to give the child CPR. They did some attempts to save his life, but unfortunately, 21-month-old Jakobe Applewhite was dead on the scene. Now, in interviewing, the mother and her live-in boyfriend, Mr. Lamel McDaniel, both of them were at the scene as well, and they told the story of Jakobe being sick a couple of days prior. He wasn't acting like himself, and both of them denied any wrongdoing. And during that time, the officer spoke with the medical examiner on the scene after Jakobe had passed, and the medical examiner said that his stomach was distended, as though he had swallowed something. But we would later find out that would be because of blood pooling in his stomach from the lacerated pancreas. Now, that next day, the officer, he attended the autopsy report, right? And these are his notes from the autopsy report. Now, when the doctor made the incision, the officer said he noticed a large amount of what appeared to be blood flowing out of Jakobe's stomach. And when he asked what it was, the autopsy the doctor confirmed that it was blood, and there was a lacerated pancreas and hemorrhaging in his stomach. So basically, Jakobe was punched so hard that his pancreas intersected with his spine, and it ruptured, filling his stomach. So basically, for 2 days, he pretty much bled out in his stomach. Also, the doctor said he found circular bruises to the top and the bottom of his testicles. And also, he found that there were past fractures to Jakobe's ribs. Now, and the trauma, once again, he said it happens when the pancreas is pushed against the spine, causing a laceration. Now, once again, the detective went back. He spoke with Heather and told her of the injuries, and she actually tried to blame it on her children down here. Now, I'm gonna read what she said. She said that the children will sometimes fight and snatch toys, and they are always fighting, and they will hit each other, anything. So, but they were always hitting each other, and then she also said that the child fell about 10 days prior. But of course that isn't consistent with the autopsy report, because the autopsy report said with those injuries, they had to happen within 2 days. He couldn't live longer than 2 days with those injuries. Now, also, further down the line, when they interrogated Miss Lipscomb, they said that She said that he had been sick, but she never takes him to the doctor because she owes money to the pediatric center. So she hadn't taken him to the doctor since he was 4 months old. She also spoke about having a bad childhood, admitting to smoking marijuana, and once again, she tries to blame his injuries on the other children roughhousing. Now, also, when the officer asked her about his bruises on the testicles, this was her explanation that he often jumps in and out of the bathtub and probably hit his testicles on the bathtub, which once again is just so outrageous that it is obvious a lie. Now, also about 2 days later, detectives went into her phone. She gave him permission to take the pictures out of her phone, and they said the pictures of Jakobe laying on the bed with just a diaper on. The pictures were taken approximately 1 hour before his death, and they show him alive with red marks on his leg, which once again appeared to be blood pooling in those locations. So basically, this woman was torturing this child to death and watching him die. Then they interviewed the boyfriend once again, and the boyfriend said, when the officer asked him, well, is it possible that when she went to spank Jakobe, she actually hit him in the stomach? And the boyfriend said, well, anything is possible. Now, once again, he went back. This officer went back, did his due diligence. He went back to the examiner, and he found out that the laceration to the pancreas only came 48 hours before the child's death. Now, once again, then they moved on to the Applewhite family. They interviewed the Applewhite father, the father of the child, and also the grandmother. And they told the police about the mental history of this woman who has, threatened to hurt herself, actually hurt herself, cut herself a few times, also jumped out of a moving car, and also was distraught because, the Jakobe Applewhite, who was the father of all three, had kind of moved on, and she had made threats concerning, hurting the children. And so they continued to do their investigation, and it was about a month later, 4 months later in July, when they finally got all the evidence, and they concluded that no one had been in Jakobe's presence but the mother and her boyfriend within that time limit. So what they did was charge her with first-degree murder. And once again, this is her arrest paper. This is dated July 8. You see first-degree murder circled there. So July the 8th, she was arrested, and you see right here, no bond. Now, this is where the case gets a little tricky, because when the woman was arrested, and I always stutter when I call her a woman, because who would do that to a 21-month-old child? But the woman was arrested, and the children, Shania and Kalia, was taken from the home. Now, they didn't give them to the Applewhite family, even though they were present. That the judge, once again, this Miss Heath lady, put them in foster care. Now, the Applewhite family made motions to regain custody of the two girls, and they went through various measures with court-appointed lawyers. And during that time, they described the treatment from Miss Heath and the court-appointed lawyers as racist, as non-cooperative, and they tell me that she treated them like they were the one on trial for murder. They did not release the kids to the mother or the father. And when the Applewhite family realized that the court-appointed lawyers in Kinston were not cooperating, they decided that they're going to fire those lawyers, and they're going to get their own attorney. Now, Taisha Applewhite, which is the grandmother, told me the next time they went to court, they were granted custody of those children, and that was probably in the early part of 2000. in the year 2000. So they regained custody of the kids, and while the mother was still in custody, the grandmother actually filed for and adopted the kids. So the kids are legally still hers during that time manner. Now, as time went on, you see here, Miss Lipscomb started getting bond reduction. So the first bond reduction happened here on December the 17th of 2019, only about 5 months after her arrest. You see here the bond was initially zero, but now they changed it to $500,000. Now, also, if you see right here, on this bond order, it says defendant is only to have contact with kids through the Department of Social Service supervised visits. Now, why is this on a bond reduction order and the lady hasn't even gotten out of jail yet? That's the first red flag as well. But also, why would even they want this lady who has been charged and evidence shows that she had murdered one of the children? Why would they want these children back in her possession? Nevertheless, that happened, and her bond was reduced to $500,000, and that was in December of 2019. Now, this bond reduction right here is about 6 months later. You'll see it's the May the 21st. Her bond was reduced from $500,000 to $250,000. And once again, you see that once again order that the defendant is only to have supervised visits according with DSS. And this is May 2020. Now, she stayed in jail once again for another year until August the 21st. Now, on August the 21st, her bond was reduced. On July 15th, her bond was reduced to $150,000. Now, once again, you see right here, the defendant is released upon making bond. She will remain on electronic monitoring in Wayne County through the duration of the trial. Now, this right here is an order of the court, but yet and still, this lady is not on electronic monitoring, but also she has not yet been brought to trial yet, and it is going on 4 years. Now, this is her bond release, and she was released once again on August the 21st, if I'm not mistaken. August the 21st, she was released. And so, this right here, once again, is the release order. You see August 21st, but you also see felony murder, right? This lady has been released on a felony murder charge. Now, it was only after about two months after being released, this lady, Miss Lipscomb, has the audacity to ask the court to grant her visitation rights with the children whom she didn't murder, but who watched her murder their younger brother. Now, once again, this judge, Elizabeth Heath, who had already shown disdain and contempt for the Applewhite family, actually granted this request. Now, I don't understand why or how that this request was granted, because as the Applewhite said, the girls were doing fine. The girls were actually the oldest girl, because the youngest girl didn't remember. She was only 2 months, but the oldest girl had been going to therapy. She had been seeing a psychiatrist. She had been doing well, and the psychiatrist actually said that she didn't need any more treatment because she has gotten over it. She doesn't talk about it. She doesn't have any nightmares. Now, of course, when that order by once again, Judge Elizabeth Heath was made, the Applewhite family protested because, first of all, the psychiatrist didn't recommend it, but also they didn't feel that it was even healthy or legal or even in the best interest of anybody involved for that child to be in the presence of a mother who was still pending a murder trial. Nevertheless, this Judge Elizabeth Heath made it a court order for the Applewhite family to take this girl every 1 or 2 or twice a month to see this woman who was accused of murdering their daughter. Now, murdering their brother, Jakobe Applewhite. So, against their wishes, against the morality of every judgment I've seen. I've never seen anything about that, and that's where the racial component comes in. Of course, Mr. Applewhite is a black man, and Miss Lipscomb is a white lady born in Kinston, North Carolina. If anybody knows about the history of Kinston, North Carolina, Wayne, Johnston County, all of these eastern North Carolina towns, it has been rife with racism for years. Actually, it was only about 50 years ago that Kinston was sterilizing black women. Many people don't know that. But that is what I see of this. It has been long a taboo in the South of black women, black men messing with white women. And I think that this is where the vitriol towards the Applewhite family has came from this judge. Mr. Jakobe Applewhite, he's a young black man, has long dreads, and very proud of his, Afrocentricity. And I think that, that is where the vitriol comes from this judge. Now, they tell me of court proceedings where Judge Heath actually orders everyone out of the courtroom when they're doing the civil and custody hearings, and they refuse, or they prohibit the Applewhites from bringing up the fact that this lady is charged with murder of one of the grandkids. That is the only reason why we don't want her seeing the kids. Nevertheless, she tells them to be quiet. She refers to them as you people and shows an overall disregard for their concerns through the courts. Now, DSS actually prohibited that as well. They made the recommendations. All of the professionals concerning the case made the recommendations that the child not to be seen with her mother, but Judge Heath overruled all of those concerns. Now, it came to a point, because the case is in Lenoir County and the Applewhites live in Wayne County. The system, the court system, DSS, moved the case from Lenoir County to Wayne County. Nevertheless, this Judge Heath said, I'm going to be following this case. I have people in high places, and I'm going to stay on this case whether it's moved to Wayne County or not. And that is exactly what she has done. She is still the judge on this case, even though the DSS has removed the case from Lenoir County and placed it in Wayne County. Nevertheless, throughout the time period, 2 years since Heather has been out, they have had to deal with this woman and the trauma that it brings, seeing the person who has killed their grandson and their son. On one occasion, the DSS failed to give the Applewhites a date for them to meet with Miss Lipscomb, and they missed that date. The judge held the Applewhites in contempt of court, even though the Department of Social Services got on the stand and testified that it was their fault they didn't give her the date. Lastly, one day, the youngest child, who was only 3 or 2, she had poison ivy and couldn't be around people. So on that date, Mrs. Applewhite took the older daughter, Shania, to the Lipscomb, but left the younger one home. And for that, she was charged with contempt of court and given a year's probation, 80 hours of community service, and some other things. Now, they have continuously fought, and they actually just hired another lawyer to negate the communication with this lady. And actually, the situation came to a head in November because the judge, once again, this judge, Elizabeth Heath, has tried to order the Applewhites and Miss Lipscomb to have mediation with each other, knowing the pending murder trial and knowing everything else that has transpired there. This judge is trying to get them to have mediation. Now, on this day, the DSS and the mediation courts rejected the judge's order. They said, no, this is not, they don't need to be, in the same room together until this murder trial gets handled. And so the judge in this case said, well, maybe they can do it on their own. And then that's when Mrs. Applewhite spoke up in the court and said, listen, why are you trying to get us to form a relationship with this woman who has killed our grandson? and the judge told her to shut up and be quiet. And at that point, Miss Applewhite said, "Oh my God." And at that reaction, she was held in contempt of court, jailed for 30 days, and this judge took those two young daughters out of her custody and placed him back in foster care. Now, and where they remain to this day. Now, that is November the 17th. That has been 3 months where Miss Applewhite has been providing for these children for the whole time. And not only that, the children don't know this lady. Once again, and the mother still has visitation rights, even though she's pending a murder trial, and the Applewhites do not. And let me show you this video because I was given this video by Miss Applewhite. If you can watch this with me, this is the day that those children were taken from the Applewhite home that they've been staying in for the past 3 years after they watched their mother kill their little brother. So just watch with me. I hope it don't stop buffering. And there's other family members. And you hear the children crying. This is what this lady is doing to these little girls in the name of her vitriol towards this family. Now you tell me, now that is the father right there having to say goodbye to his children because they have done nothing wrong, all because of this judge is showing her vitriol for black life and black family. And this is what the Applewhite family is going through. Once again, this lady, Miss Heather Lipscomb, is still out working. I think she works at T-Mobile right here. She's going about her best life, being able to see these children. And this judge, Miss Elizabeth Heath, has such vitriol towards black people that she would put this family through that after they have not even received justice for the death of her son. And moreover, Mr. Shipman, Jeremy Shipper, or someone who's the DA in Lenoir County, has yet brought this case to trial. Now, once again, this is the amended petition which was filed for the courts, negating or not negating, expressing concerns of Miss Lipscomb seeing the kids. This said the medical examiner report showed blunt force trauma to the abdomen. It was reported there had to be significant force to abdomen causing injuries to the intestines. There was bruising to the child's right testicle. The medical examiner report showed that there was evidence of possible previous fractures to the child's rib. Shania and Kalia Applewhite resided in the home with their now deceased brother, Jakobe Applewhite, all of whom were in the exclusive care of their mother, Heather Lipscomb. Shania